All right. Good evening to those of you on the East Coast. Good afternoon, or I guess you can say almost nearly early evening for those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us for this week in review. The show in which we give you the rundowns of the goings on in the entertainment industry. And of course, I'm not alone in talking about some of the news bits that perhaps, you may have missed over the course of the week, whether it's an entertainment business or the like. And you guys are in luck because I have my normal host, co-host with me, Spillman. But I also have an additional host joining us just for this special occasion of one of the stories that we have today that we will really dive into. So, first off, let me introduce Spillman, my
Yo, what's
regular
up,
partner
everybody?
in
How's it
crime. What's going
going?
on, man? Just tilt down a little
How's it
bit. You got
going?
your
How's it going?
head cut off,
Oh
man.
yeah, there we
Come
go.
down
There
just
we
a little
go.
bit. There we
There we
go.
go.
There we
There
go.
we go. All right, cool. Hi
All right.
guys.
What's up?
What's up, everybody? I'm so happy to see you. Happy to be here to talk about the goings on of the week because some things happened this week. Some
There
things
are
that were
some
very
things
big
that
happened
happened
this
this
week.
week, and I know we're going to dive into that too once
That's
we
right.
once we talk about that, which I'm all good with. Hey, I don't run away. So we going to dive into that too. But as I said, I'm happy to have an additional host joining us. And talking about some of the news bits that have been going on this week, particularly one of them, which I know he really wants to dive into. You know him from the Star Trek shows that we have. Most recently, with our Picard talkback show, it's my pleasure to welcome Josh Pritchard Jr. Josh, hello, sir.
Good
Bring him
evening,
on.
Brandon and Spillman, and
What's up? What's
everybody out
up?
here in Movers and Shakers Land. How we doing this evening?
What's up?
We
What's
are doing
up? How's it
great.
going?
We are
Excellent,
doing great.
good. Yeah, I
All
am
right.
very
So
excited to
let
be here this evening to talk about the big news.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
awesome. So without further ado, because there are a couple of things that I want that I know we all want to get into. So we'll start off first about one of the news stories that did make the rounds this week, and I'll bring it up here now. And that was the recent news regarding Babylon 5, the
Yes.
road home, the news
Oh
that
yeah.
dropped regarding that, about the voice cast, and what was revealed there. Man, like the news that we got about some of the folks that will be lending their talents here is quite incredible. But Josh, I know that you are biting at the bit to share your thoughts on it, so I will pass the baton to you to start.
Well, this is news that has been long overdue. Frankly, about I think it's been almost 4 years ago, it was announced that J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of the original Babylon 5 series, which first aired, as a matter of fact, in 1993. So we are literally at the 30-year mark for
Wow.
Babylon 5.
Oh yeah.
I
Just
don't
this
feel
past,
young. I don't feel old at all, guys. I don't feel old at all.
Not at all. No.
yeah, I had hair about 30 years ago, believe it or not. So, um, so yes, J. Michael Straczynski is returned to bring back Babylon 5. Now, originally, 4 years ago, the plan was it was going to be a reboot of the show. It's going to retell the original story with some changes, new special effects, new actors, updated prosthetics. Basically, go back and retell the story. Um, Now, though, because it has gone back and forth between, okay, were we going to be on CW? Were we going to be at HBO? We're going to be on CW. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And this actor might be attached to it. That actor might be attached. And then finally, we have landed on an animated film, which will be bringing back the original surviving cast members, which include Bruce Boxleitner reprising his role as John Sheridan, Claudia Christian returning as Susan Ivanova, Peter Jurassic has Ambassador / Emperor Londo Malari, Bill Mumy is returning as Lanier, and Tracy Sogans as Captain or maybe possibly General Elizabeth Lockley, and Patricia Tallman has Telepath and quasi-terrorist Lita Alexander, filling in various voiceover parts for cast members that are sadly no longer with us. Paul Garriett has both Zathras and Commander Jefferson Clare. Anthony Hampson has Security Chief Michael Garibaldi. Mara Janot has reporter and computer voice. The great Phil Lamar of Mad TV and various other animated shows has Dr. Stephen Alexander. Pietro Michael has David Sheridan, Captain Sheridan's son. Andrew Morgado has Ambassador Jakar, and Rebecca Reedy has Ambassador Delenn. These were the big announcements this week in the Hollywood Reporter. In addition to the return of the series, and just kind of a quick recap of what Babylon 5 was. Basically, Babylon 5 was a floating United Nations in outer space that was meant to bring together all of the various races in the Babylon 5 universe so that they could work out their difference peacefully instead of having another great war, which had been happening. Unfortunately, it fails with the return of an ancient alien species that is set to wreak havoc across the galaxy. And I'm not doing the show any justice. It was a lot more complicated than that. But it really was a show, I feel like, that really forced other shows like Star Trek to up their game. What are you guys feeling about this? Spielman, I know that you were a fan of B5 back in the day.
I am a huge fan of Babylon 5. I love all the characters on it. I love that they're bringing it back. Like, to me, Next Generation is the best like sci-fi show that came out in the 90s. And Babylon 5 is right up there. Like there's a lot more, like Babylon 5 has a much better cohesion in their series. It's not like a bunch of strange kind of lost seasons like some of the other Star Trek properties were. I think that it
Sound like you're trying to
really
say
had
filler. Not a whole bunch of filler.
I mean, it's not a lot of whole filler. I mean, those Babylon 5 is to it. And also they didn't have like, sometimes with these network shows, especially in the 90s, like the 90s is real notorious for having super long seasons of like, what are we doing here? Every week we're doing an episode, but it doesn't make any sense. So I like Babylon 5. It was a good show. It like, I think if I'm remembering this correct, maybe I'm being crazy, but I think I remember it was on Sci-Fi Channel back in the day. Was it on the Sci-Fi? I think it was.
No, it was actually produced by
Was it
Warner Brothers.
Paramount?
It was in syndication.
Okay, yeah.
There was an attempt in around 2000 to have another Babylon 5 spinoff called Legend of the Rangers that was produced by Sony Television and was going to air on Sci-Fi. For whatever reason, Sci-Fi decided not to option it after the movie had aired, which was very unfortunate for those of us who love Babylon 5.
Yes, sir.
Prior to that, it was actually the final season of B5 was aired on TNT. Was sandwiched in there between the various WCW shows.
Yeah,
and then
I remember that.
Yeah, and then it aired 4 2-hour TV movies on TNT, which were spectacular. They were just kind of extra episodes they couldn't work into the 5-year story, but they got them made, and they were fantastic as well. And then there was another short-lived spinoff called Crusade, and unfortunately, it was canceled before the first episode aired, but it got to run the first 12 episodes, and they'd hoped that maybe fan response would get people to motivate TNT to, keep the show going, but not. However, there is one bright thing to say about Crusade. It was the jumping off show for an actor by the name of Daniel Day Kim, who go on to do such TV shows as Lost and Hawaii Five-0 and appear in all kinds of movies. So, Yes, it is these small sci-fi, obscure sci-fi roles that can launch careers. So there are no small
Yes,
parts,
for sure.
folks. Yes.
For sure, for sure. And I was gonna say one thing that because I know you guys deep dive far far deeper into that show than I did. I watched the show, but perhaps not as consistently as you guys did. So it was pretty
Hmm.
inconsistent. I would watch portions of a season here and there. However, one thing that I will say is it's always great to have a beloved series. It's always great to have an opportunity to revisit that world, and also if it is animated, it provides a lot of luxury,
Yeah.
in terms of the storytelling of being able to carry on the story as much as you like, and you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to time. As we know, a lot of times with huge franchises, we are at the mercy of time, especially if certain actors are aging out of the roles that they're playing, and it kind of takes
Yeah.
the believability out of it. Like, a good case in point is, say if you're playing a vampire and the actor is continuing to age, like they're supposed to not age. How does that work? You're gonna have to try to
Yeah.
still explain that. If you have a character where you have a family member that has kids, and the kids like are now bigger than their parents are, because they went through a growth spurt, and now they are like almost look like adults, and you can't you know address the series as if they are kids or if they're youngsters, especially if it's within the title. A good case in point is Two and a Half Men. It ended up become Three Men versus Two and a Half Men because he was taller than his
Yeah.
co-stars.
Well,
um
and you can't send all your kids off to Iraq either.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Bad
There's
joke.
only but so many
Yeah.
stories that you can tell.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it provides that flexibility to be able to kind of stretch, the capacity of stories that I feel you can tell. The only other downside, to that, I feel, which we'll talk about later, is how it can kind of um lead into some other unexpected circumstances as we start talking about the writer strike and things like that. So
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I just wanted to. This is going to work out very well for Babylon 5 because almost half of the original regular cast has already passed away for various reasons. I
Yeah.
mean, first Andreas Katsoulis, who played Jakar, he was best known for playing a recurring villain on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then of course also being the one-armed man in the film version of The Fugitive. He passed away sometime in 2001, 2002 of lung cancer.
Yeah.
Um, Richard Biggs, who played Dr. Franklin in the original series, he passed away of a brain aneurysm. Um, Stephen First, who of course was best known as for playing Blubber
Of course.
in the movie in Animal House, he passed away due to complications of diabetes.
Yeah.
Jeff Conroy, who was previously been on the show Taxi, he passed away. Uh, Jerry Doyle, who played Garibaldi, he had a lot of personal issues, and he passed away too. And then of course Mira Furlan had health problems. She passed away just before the pandemic, so that was extremely sad.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, goes to
yeah,
that case in point of what we were saying of it being
yeah,
animated and having that flexibility to continue the story forward.
yeah. And then of course there was also when they were filming the show, they had various cast problems. Andrea Thompson, who was on the show in the first season, she left after the second season, and then Patricia Tallman came in, or actually she returned. She was in the original pilot and then returned. She apparently had a falling out with Straczynski and was essentially fired. If I understand correctly, that was what happened. Spillman, did you hear anything about that?
I didn't hear anything about that, but I think that I think that the Babylon 5 show, it having that space in Babylon 5 in the 90s made it so that the other sci-fi shows had to, like you said earlier, up their games. Like
Yeah,
they put in better set pieces. They did episodes that were more like dynamic and stuff instead of just, creature of the week kind of episodes. They started doing actual storylines where they're actually fighting things and doing those kind of things. So I think that it's just, great that they're coming back. We've heard of some of the issues. My guy Phil Lamar, one of the great voice actors in Hollywood, is on the show. So,
Oh,
Phil Lamar being
yeah.
there is just
And
amazing.
I'll say
So
shout out to Phil Lamar anyway, because it's so rare to have, guests to, normally pop up at, cons and things. And I'll give Lamar credit. Like I call him like a perennial guest at Awesome Con. He's always at Awesome Con. If anyone is not familiar with Awesome Con, it's the show that we have, all of us have here in the nation's capital. And that's like our big
Mm.
con. And man, I mean, I can't count how many times, he's been there. And, it's great to, have a guest who, enjoys coming to your con and comes to it on a regular basis, versus, coming once and never coming back. So,
Yeah,
um,
and he is a very nice guy that
yeah,
really
yeah,
does
for sure.
support it.
For sure.
And I just want to say, how Babylon 5 differs from either Star Trek or Star Wars is that B5, each season was like a self-contained science fiction novel. Like the first season, that was all about introducing everybody, and season 2 was the war between the Centauri and the Narn, which they were two of the big races. And then season 3 was, okay, we're getting into the Shadow War. And then season 4 is concluding that, and then, saving Earth. And then season 5
right.
is all about building this grand galactic alliance, which is where the show left off at. And it was different in the sense that, okay, like Deep Space Nine, yeah, it took place on a space station, but Deep Space Nine was still about going into the Gamma Quadrant and exploring stuff. Whereas B5, everything was like, okay, everything comes here
Yeah.
because we have all these like palace intrigues, we have all these duplicities going on, and everybody's like, first everyone's trying to, kind of mess everybody over, try to see what they can get. Then they're like, hey, we've actually got to work together or the whole universe is going to be destroyed. And that's kind of the positive thing is like both Star Trek and B5, I think, shares like, hey, we're better together than we are working against each other. Let's try to do more of that because I think we can all achieve something here if we're all, learning to work together. And I think that was kind of the brilliancy. That was the message of the show. And it really was such a relevant show because I mean, there's this corrupt authoritarian Earth president named Clark, and it's like going back and looking at that show 30 years later, and it's like so much of what they talked about on that show was what happened more recently, and
Yeah.
it's so mind-blowing. It's like, guys, this is why more people need to watch science fiction. Don't just dismiss it as being, oh, it's aliens and robots, and how does this even relevant to me?
Right.
If you really do a deep intellectual dive, it's probably more relevant than most anything else out there in television or in literature, because it's like a lot of the stuff you see happening in the world right now is stuff some sci-fi writers thinking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
Okay, and I wish more people took it serious. I wish more people read 1984 than a John Grisham book, okay? Because you just would get some. That's me on my rant. I'll get off my soapbox now.
You're fine, man.
Nervous
Don't
there.
worry. Don't
Just
worry.
off
I'm
again.
soapboxing this next one. This next one that's coming up,
Uh-oh, here we
Brandon's
go.
getting soapbox. Don't worry,
Here we
ladies
go.
and gentlemen. It's
Before
coming.
we soapbox
It's
that
coming.
though, Josh, I know you got a skedaddle. So before I
Yeah.
let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Okay, yeah, you can find me at my Facebook page, Josh Pritchett Jr., or you can find me at meetup.org at the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup group, which I am the head organizer of. My book, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available on Amazon and Kindle, and I am currently working on another book. So I am going to get back to that now, and I'm going to let you two gentlemen do your thing. And Spillman, it was great seeing you, Brandon. I'll see you again
Always.
soon.
Always.
And you guys take care. Live long and prosper. And
Awesome, man.
good
Thanks
night,
so much.
everybody.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye bye.
So Josh is gonna skedaddle, but I know Spill, you wanted to get into that next topic of talking basketball. I know you were chomping at the bit of
Oh,
talking
ladies and
about,
gentlemen.
and as luck will have it, both of our teams were playing. How about that? Both of our
They were
teams
playing each
were
other. I think
and
they were
playing each
playing
other.
each
How
other,
about
ladies and
that?
gentlemen.
I know, because
Hmm.
I remember a couple of days ago, you
Hmm.
were a little quiet when I sent that message about, it's just one game, and you were like, yeah, I suppose, but now that we have the series, yeah, series over, series is over. I'm not a sore
That's right.
loser.
The series is over,
I'm not a
ladies and
sore
gentlemen.
loser, but
Oh,
series is over. That
I'm
now
not going to be a
now
sore winner.
now
Not
you
going to be.
want to talk. Now you want to talk.
That's right, ladies and
But
gentlemen.
okay. All right, let's
I
get
just
into
want you
it.
guys to know. I
We've
just want
had,
you guys to know.
some updates when it comes to the semi round of the playoffs, whether it's been the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. And I'm gonna share it up here because they actually have the table up. So I
Oh,
actually have the
yeah.
web page up. So give me a second while I share this. I mean, there have been some elements that have been surprising, but there've been other ones that haven't been
Yeah, for
surprising,
sure.
which I'll get into. Um, let me see. It should be up now. Here we go. So,
Okay,
getting
cool.
into the playoffs and what we got here. Um, there have been some components of it, as I said, that have been, surprising and unexpected, but there have been other parts of it that haven't. Um, I will say, and I don't know how you feel about this, how things wrapped up with the Nuggets and the Suns. I was not
Oh, yeah.
anticipating that to wrap up in that way. I thought it was at least
I
I thought it was gonna go. I thought it was gonna go 7 games. I thought that they were pretty evenly because Jokic is having an incredible season. I feel he doesn't get enough credit when it comes to how effective he is as a player. And now that they've gotten past the semifinals, people are, I feel like, giving him his due a lot more. I feel like people take him for granted in terms of what he has accomplished and what he does for that team.
Yeah.
And they're a deep team too. So that was another thing that I didn't, even though Phoenix has incredible players, whether it's with Booker or with Durant. I feel like they're very top heavy. So, once
Yeah,
you
for
pass
sure.
that initial rotation with the starting five, the team becomes pretty thin in terms of, players that are able to produce and to contribute. So I felt that it was going to be a battle of their starters versus basically, the how deep they were able to go, the Nuggets would be able to go with their team. Because I mean, of course, outside of Jokic, you have Murray and you have a few other players, but still, as I said, in terms of comparing those teams, the big X factor I felt was going to be, how deep the Nuggets were and whether they would show up. And it looks, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, they pretty much did with what happened. I mean, what are your thoughts on that series? And then we'll make our way down to Lakers and Warriors.
I think that this playoffs ultimately has shown that like you can't go very far without talented big men. Like I know that the Warriors team has come in. They've kind of flipped basketball on its head. Like, people are saying
Small
the
ball.
the corner three is the most important shot in basketball. Well, we all know it's a layup. It's an uncontested layup. We need layups. You can't make layups, you can't win games. And also the teams that prevent the other team from making layups. So protecting the rim, if it's Joel Embiid, AD, some Jokic, but
And
and
Spill, I was gonna
also
say before you continue, I'm sorry, man. Either tilt your camera up or I would say just back up a bit. I know you can't help it because I know, as we said, we commented many times on the show that you tall, man. So want to make sure that we get all of you and not just like half of your face. Here we go. So
hold on.
so tilt it up just a little bit.
Can you
Yeah, like right there. Perfect. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't want
Okay,
to
cool.
interrupt.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
But like
you're
I was
fine.
saying, ladies and gentlemen, the big man. This has been the playoffs of the big man yet again, and we're not talking about big men that run up and down the court and dunk and do that kind of thing and play point guard. We're not talking about those kind of big men. We talk about big men that play a lot of defense, that just destroy that paint. I think that the fact that Chris Paul went down was very big for the Suns. Like, I understand that Chris Paul is up there in age. They don't really have a bench, but they needed floor generals. But you can't play that two-man game forever. You can't play, all right, this wing is coming or this wing is coming. But that gets really easy to defend. It gets really easy to strategize against. And also, they scored. I think they had the highest like point total the Suns did as two players. But I mean, outside of that one game, they weren't really cooking like that. So to me, I think that it's a changing of the guard again in the NBA. Big men are returning. I'm so happy the big men is returning because, like, unfortunately, I love the Warriors, but they really had little dudes thinking y'all can play basketball with us. Y'all can't play with us, man. It's the big man's world. It's
See,
the
nah,
team.
no, I
The
have
team
thoughts
with the
on
best
that.
big man wins. The team
I
with the
have
best
thoughts
big
on
man
that.
wins.
I still have thoughts on
The
that, but
way
but, but
that
go ahead. I'll let you finish.
the way that they had no answer for Jokic because Jokic was a better big man than Aiden. Aiden does rebound well and stuff, and he's good. But you know, if, if the thing about basketball is, if you can get fouls on the other guys, that's great. So if you continue to get fouls, you continue to get slow that clock down, and in playoff basketball, that's the most important thing. Slow down the number of possessions, slow down the clock, get quality shots. So that big man layup is a quality shot. It doesn't hurt you as much as if he misses it because you don't have to run back as far. But in this NBA, we shoot a lot of threes. You get buried by that. Shoot all them threes you want to. Y'all not about to make all of them, so they just weather the storm. And Jokic is a bad man, dog. Like, oh,
He is. I'm
that's a
I'm
bad
telling you,
man.
people keep sleeping on him.
They sleeping on him. They
They
sleep
keep
on him.
sleeping on him.
They sleep on him. They also sleep on AD, and they forget, to kind of switch gears. They forget that Anthony Davis won a championship in college and didn't score a bucket, but he had like 5 or 6 blocks. Like, look, you may not score all the buckets, but if the other team is not scoring, we don't need your scoring as much. If you stopping these other guys from scoring and they can't get a shot 15 feet in and everybody's worried about it, there's a psychological effect to that. Like if you start just destroying people's stuff, they do not want to play with you. They don't want to come in the paint. They don't want to do none of that. So to me, I feel like it's the resurgence of the big man. And it's finally due because the NBA had to correct itself. There's no way we was gonna have people walking up and down the court throwing from 40 and thinking that they was just going to win a bunch of championships like that. I know y'all won a bunch of championships like that, but everybody thinks they're going to do that. That's not how it works, man.
So okay. So here's my thought. And I'm not gonna be one of those cats that are like, oh well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And so that's why we lost. I'll give props where props are due. Y'all played a great series. Lakers played a great series. Shout out to y'all. I wasn't anticipating AD to be healthy. I'm gonna be honest with you, but he was. So, or at least he was enough for you guys to get through the series. So, hey, like if you have, and this goes to what I'm talking about in terms of what I argue back to you, it may be the time of the big man, and I'm gonna put you up on. I'm gonna be channel Mr. Smith here. Let me see
Mm-hmm.
if I can get myself up here. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Get you up
Oh,
here too.
okay, let's do it.
All right. So here's the thing. I agree with you that we're seeing resurgence of big men, but here's where I disagree with you. The NBA is forever changed, whether people want to admit it or not. Yeah, we have big men, but we have hybridized big men, if that makes any sense. We have big men that we have we get, again and again and again we get far more big men that are not putting their back to the basket and they have guard skills. You just talking about Jokic and just a moment ago. The reason why he's so effective is not just because he's big and he can rebound and he can get to the basket, but he can also pass. He's a terrific passer, very underrated passer, as a matter of fact, in terms of what he does for that team and how he's able to help start the break, how he's able to find perimeter players when they are ready to shoot, because that's another thing that I feel like doesn't really get enough credit, is his ability to be able to pass out of double teams and to also start the break.
Oh
I'll
yeah, for
challenge you
sure,
guys.
for
I'll
sure.
challenge you guys. Anyone who doesn't really know, not really familiar with Jokic's passing, is you can look it up. And I know that they have some videos out there of showing like highlights of him just throwing outlet passes and starting to break. Like I feel like he doesn't really get enough credit for his effectiveness as a passer. Like he's one of the best passers, big men passers I've ever seen, and he's right up there with some guards, like in terms
Yeah,
of
he's
what he
like
can pass.
Jokic is like when you're like 8 or 9 and you start playing basketball, but your dad's friend plays as one of the other guys, but your dad's friend knows, like your friend's dad or your dad knows how to play. So he starts throwing like crazy behind his back passes and
Well,
stuff.
not
Like he's
even
not
that.
running fast,
I'll
but
take it a
like
step
just like
further.
yeah,
I was gonna say I'll take it a step further, and it's talking about AD, player on your team. Like
yeah.
if anyone isn't familiar with AD, if I understand this correctly, if I remember his history, he was not always tall. Like he
No,
was
he was not.
actually he
And he
actually went through a
plays
growth.
like it too. He does.
Yeah,
He does.
he went through a growth spurt, later on in life, and prior to that, he had to establish guard skills, and it worked to his benefit once he, went through his major growth spurt and became a big man, because he wasn't, when he was playing basketball, when he started playing basketball, he wasn't always big. He was actually pretty small, and
Yeah.
so because of that, in relation to his contemporaries who are big men, who are like old school big men, as I said, like the NBA is forever change. While we may have, big men that are starting to make a resurgence back, and they are, it's helpful to have that size. We still can't deny the impact of big men who have guard skills that can step out of the three, that are not just bulldozers that are just taking it right to the rim. These days, you have them that they can take it to the rim. They can step out on you. They can hit the perimeter shot. They can handle the
For sure.
ball like a guard. AD case in point. So like, to a degree, I understand what you're saying, but in the same breath, like I also to a degree don't agree, because like we still have
I
that
feel like
hybridization happening. We will never. I don't feel like we'll ever really get back to the old school big men that would just have their face, have their back to the basket.
I feel like when we say old school big man, we also are kind of talking about like Shaq, because we grew up in the Shaq era and like Shaq was like so ball
Oh, I'm talking
dominant.
about Olajuwon. Like, I mean,
But
Olajuwon
he
had
would
great
step out.
footwork.
Elijah wants to step out. He had great footwork. You could argue that Kareem would step out. Like he wouldn't step out all the way to three because that really wasn't his repertoire.
But
But
do
you
we
know,
consistently have big men who are handling the ball like a guard? And do
I
we
think the
consistently?
handle is the new thing. I think the handle is a little bit new, but I think also if the big men handle the ball a little bit more, that just means that the big men is going to get back to being the ball dominators. Because like Kareem said it himself when he saw Giannis Antetokounmpo, he said, I wish they would let me do that. The only reason why I didn't do that is because people wouldn't let me do that. Like they would
I mean,
say,
even
no, you just got
Embiid,
to run down.
like people kind
Yeah,
of sleep on Embiid's ball handling. Embiid has pretty decent handle, like for a big
yeah,
man, for a guy
yeah.
his size, he
Hold
has
on, hold on.
decent
That's
handle.
negative. Don't say for a big man. That's like saying you're pretty for a heavy set woman.
And
That's like, come
I
on,
know,
man.
man. I know you
Just
get
tell
real
me I'm
sensitive about it,
pretty.
because I know you're a
Just
big man
tell
in
me I
too.
can
I get it.
handle.
I get it. But
Tell me I
you
can hold
understand
that
what I'm
rock.
saying. You
For
understand
sure,
what I'm
for sure.
saying. There's no slight against him. I'm just saying, if I'm comparing him to like, our guards out there that, have that reputation of being great ball handlers. I'm talking about our Kyries, our, Ja Morant's. Like, don't get me wrong. He's
Sure, but
not the
those
same
guys are
level,
all
but I'm
home.
just
Those
saying, if
guys
we're
are all home.
comparing it
All these guys you're talking about are
relatively,
home.
if
We're
we're
talking about these
comparing
guys
it
that win.
relatively, for a guy his size, you don't really see that often of him being able to handle the ball the way he can. That's all I'll say. And
Okay,
being
sure.
able to consistently step out at the three And it's not like a shot where, they're hitting at the end of the buzzer. Like, it's actually a part of his game. And, not only is he comfortable, these players are comfortable doing it, they have the green light to do it. So, the coach is allowing them to do it. Cause I mean, even if we're picturing as these players were starting to emerge, these big men that, had guard like skills, it still was, while they may have had the skill or they were starting to, develop that skill, it wasn't very, frequent to see like a coach willing to implement that in their offense and allow that, in their offense.
For
They
sure.
because I mean, I wouldn't say things. I feel like things started to change slightly as we started to get to, and I feel like he doesn't get a lot of credit for, kind of that shift. Steph, I feel had an influence in it, but I want to say Nowitzki also had an influence
Oh,
on
for
it
sure.
because, like, he had both. He could do the old school, game with his back to the basket, but you know, slowly but surely, we also started to see him, step further and further out and demonstrate that he had, those guard related skills. So, um, I don't know what your thoughts on it are. I wanted to touch briefly on the Eastern Conference because I feel like there's some interesting aspects to that too. In talking about what's transpired thus far,
Yeah.
with the first round and with well, not necessarily with the first round. I would say right now with the semifinals, and just like, I'll be honest, I wasn't too shocked with what happened with between the Heat and the Knicks, because I mean, Butler. Butler, I feel like, is that X factor in between those two teams. Whoever I felt had Butler on their team, if Butler was playing for the Knicks, I would have had the Knicks going, but he just has, this momentum going into, these playoffs where, and then don't get me wrong, he'll have like a stinker game, here and there, but he, for the most part, whether he has a decent game or not, he still provides those intangibles, and he provides that swagger that is, I feel undeniably helps that team. And I mean, I don't want to give all the credit to Butler because you also have Coach Spoelstra as well, who's a terrific, coach.
And
Also,
Bam,
doesn't
Bam,
doesn't give enough credit. So
Bam is a
go ahead.
redhead stepchild of the big men. Bam is a redhead stepchild of the big men. He doesn't show up as much as he needs to, but he is serviceable for them. I think that really this is a testament to Spo. Like Spo and Jimmy Butler are both bad men, and their training regiment down there, they have people, they have soldiers. Them dudes stand up. Like somebody get hurt. Tyler Hero's been in the cast this whole time. Any other team lose their second leading scorer. I think Tyler Hero was their second leading scorer or their third leading scorer. Any other team loses that guy and they're not making it this
It's
far
a
in the
wrap.
playoffs. They're just simply
It's a
not.
wrap.
It's
Yeah.
simply not. They had guys come up off the bench, and that's what you were saying with the Suns. The Suns got rid of their bench, and when they needed it, it burnt their team up. They might have been a little bit better. I think. I think they could have been better, but then again, you played just in case. So like, they had KD there, and they hoped that KD would be the guy for them. But unfortunately, it just didn't really work. But to me, I'm really excited for the East. I think um, we got a game 7 tonight or tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so we still have, which
We
I'll
got a
be
game
honest, I'm
seven.
I'm surprised that it's gotten this far, but
Oh no, these are two dogs of teams. These teams are both dogs. They're both
but
championship
I'm
ready.
still, I'm just saying, in terms of the momentum, I gave the 76ers 2 games. I didn't have it going to a game
Wow,
7.
wow.
I
I only
actually
gave
had
them
it
two
going 4
games
games,
if
like, I because
Embiid
I
didn't play.
felt that, based off the history that we've had with this team, that they would shrink. Like, I
Yeah,
gave them a couple of games, in the series, but I didn't anticipate to go a game 7. And this is, credit to the 76ers because in the past, while Harden would have like terrific regular seasons and, he's been,
He
terrific
run
for
out
the
of
series.
gas.
Yeah, he either runs out of gas, or I feel like, it doesn't. He kind of, and I could be wrong about this. It just seems that way. It appears that way. Is that he kind of like shrinks in the moment, because I'll
Yeah.
never forget where they the I'm trying to, I want to say it was with the Rockets when they
Hmm.
played. Speaking of the Warriors, that series with the Rockets and the Warriors, where they kind of had, I'll be honest, they had
They
the
had y'all on the
Warriors,
ropes.
they had them on the ropes and they weren't able to close it out. So, and I'll never forget that last game, because if I recall correctly, I'll if I'm thinking of it, I want to say it went to a game 7, and they were just cold. And I mean,
Oh,
prior to
James
that,
Harden was ice cold that
yeah, and I
series. I
mean,
think he
prior
might
to
have
that,
scored
like they
13
were they
points
were
on
shooting
30
lights
shots or
out.
something crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, prior to that game, they were shooting lights out, and I feel like nerves got really tight, as they got into that deciding game, and
Yeah.
the team that was seasoned and experienced in that situation was the one who came out of it. So, just based on that prior history, that's what kind of made me hesitant to really see the series going as far as it has. But again, credit to them that it has gone this far, and it shows a degree of growth of what they've demonstrated in the past and what they're doing now. So
Oh yeah, for sure. But I think that the Heat will pull. I mean, I think the Sixers will pull this game out because I think
I
it's
think so.
in.
Okay,
I think it's in Philadelphia. Think the Sixers will pull it out, and I think the Sixers will beat the Heat if they play. I don't know about Boston beating the Heat if they play. I don't think that
that's
Boston
fair. That's fair.
like.
I have the Celtics coming out of it, because I
Yeah.
feel like they still have something to prove based off of what happened last year. But
Hmm.
I feel like it really is going to be it's really going to be a series going against the Heat. Like the Heat are not going to are not going to just allow them just to sweep them. I think that's going to be a series. The series that we
Oh
have
yeah, for
now
sure.
semifinals, I feel is what we'll get in the finals between Boston and the Heat. But stranger things have happened. Perhaps the 76ers will
Hmm.
come out of it, but I'll be honest with you, just out of that, that need to prove, that last year wasn't, one hit wonder, so to speak, or
Yeah.
a misnomer. I feel like they're going to they're going to end up pulling out. I feel it's still going to be a tight game, this game 7, but I still feel like the Celtics are going to pull it out. So, I don't know if you have any other final thoughts before we, head off to our next story, switching gears into TV, if
I
you
just
will.
want the ladies and gentlemen to know that the Lakers are the first Western Conference team to beat the Warriors, and all confidence to them. But small ball is dead, man. You got to have a big man. Got to have a big man. So that's all I got to say.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so switching gears to our next story, and switching it to the world of TV. There was news that made the rounds that currently, as it stands, there's a possibility that Superman and Lois might potentially, be canceled. And should that happen, it may also potentially move um if that were to happen. So this is a story out of the Hollywood Reporter, and talking about the current fate of Superman and Lois. And for those that are keeping track, Superman and Lois is perhaps probably one of the few remnants that we have of the CW's superhero TV universe that included the Flash and Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow and all those guys, Supergirl, all of those.
Hmm.
um and as we enter into this new age of television, with the CW, because they are under new management, so to speak. A lot of those shows have gone to the wayside and gotten the axe, and it looks like, Superman and Lois, might be next on the chopping block. So it's unfortunate news. I don't know what your thoughts on it are, Spillman, because I mean, I want to say out of the shows that I want to say in the latter half of what's been known as the Arrowverse, as a lot of the other shows I felt were starting to get stale. Superman and Lois is consistently, and I don't know how you feel about it, but in my opinion, is consistently solid and consistently good. With the quality that they have with their show, in terms of what they uh uh the stylistically, aesthetically, what they do with the show is very cinematic, and that's testament to them, because I mean, it is a television series versus a full blown motion picture, and it has a lot of those cinematic qualities that you would more often associate with seeing it on the big screen. So what are your thoughts on the possibility that we may potentially lose this show from CW?
Well, I think that CW did very well with a lot of their like crossovers and stuff, and they like really did good universe building for the Arrowverse. But I think that, with a lot of the corporate restructuring, they're just trying to consolidate and move things into places where it's appropriate for like how many watches they get and all that. So it's unfortunate that they're trying to cancel the show. But I do like that in today's day and age, a show can get canceled. But if it has enough of a following that it's had a few episodes or a few seasons, they eventually find a way to bring those shows back. It's happened like time and time again, like Arrested Development, all kinds of other shows. Like I think that shows getting canceled is bad, but I like that now in this day and age they try to pick them back up. So if they could get picked back up, if they do get canceled, that would be great. But I just think that they need to, just like Marvel's doing the same thing, everybody's doing the same thing. They're trying to have everything be on their one streaming service and it be so successful that they never have to do one again. But that's like an impossible dream almost. So I'm just hoping that we can get a good show out of it. If it stays on the air, that'd be great. But I think they're probably going to, cancel it sadly.
So we'll see. I don't know. Like I as I said, when the series first came about, I'll be honest with you, I was a little hesitant to kind of get invested, as I remember the early years of Arrow, and the early years of the Flash, and they were outstanding, and I feel like it kind of reminds me of the conversation that we were having at the top when we were talking about Babylon 5, and you were talking about how tight it was, and
Right.
what I mean by tight is that there wasn't a lot of fat. Like, everything that was there was necessary. It wasn't
Exactly.
any episodes that felt like filler, that they were just kind of doing things by the numbers, and it felt like, and this is because I cared about both of those shows, is that it felt like as the season started to progress, past and maybe
Hmm.
like season 4, season 5, that it started to feel like there were episodes that were very much filler. And even though, I was still dedicated to, keeping up with the show, I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure a lot of other people will agree with me. My viewership of that was far less frequent as we got into those last couple of seasons, and it kind of became how I treated like college basketball, where
Oh yeah.
while I'll watch a couple of episodes, I'll watch a couple of games here and there, it didn't really like become must see viewing until we had the crossovers.
Oh yeah, for
Like,
sure.
if I'm comparing it to college basketball, I will watch a couple of big hoop games here and there, but I
Hmm.
wasn't like gung ho about it until March Madness.
For
So
sure.
So that's how it ended up becoming for me, which is unfortunate because like I'm sure that there were a lot of episodes in between there that were really good, and I managed to see some of them, and even if I missed it, I would have other friends, family that follow the show too, that would say, oh, did you catch such and such episode, and if I did, I would go back and run it back and put it up to check out. But I remember those first couple of seasons, I was there week after week after week, checking out those episodes. But
Oh yeah.
as like I said, as we got into those last few seasons, it didn't really, strike a chord with me, which is why when Superman and Lois came about, I was a little hesitant based on the on the prior history of those prior shows, and I was like, okay, all right, so how what are they gonna do with this series, and we've had Superman shows before, so what are they gonna do to kind of break the mold, or bring some new energy to it, and to their credit, like I Superman and Lois is
A
it's
great
like I said, it's
legacy
solid.
title.
It's solid.
It's a great legacy. Yeah.
The quality of the episodes, like the care that's put into the episodes, not just with the writing, but with the effects and all of those things is quite impressive. Considering that I know that they aren't working with the multitude of a budget that you would have with a film. Um, and be able to consistently provide that over the course of a season, with the episodes in your season, and is quite a testament to what they do with that show. So as I said, right now, as we speak right now, it hasn't been announced as being canceled, but the possibility is there. And I know one thing that has been discussed is, should it potentially leave the CW, is the possibility that it will end up on Max. So, for
Oh
those of you
yeah.
who are
Yes, that's what I
not
figured.
aware, yeah, for
That's what I
those of
was
you who are
talking
not
about.
aware, HBO Max, formerly HBO Max, but
Formerly,
basically, yeah,
now owned by
formerly HBO
by
Max, but it's
Discovery.
basically that's
Discovery.
what it is. It's HBO, with their digital platform. So, should that happen, I'll be down with that too if they're able to continue with there, because as I said, it would be a shame for them to get rid of that series because
Yeah,
it's awesome. So,
it's a great show. Yeah,
all right.
but I
But do
yeah.
you
Let's
have
move
any
on
other
to the
final
next
thoughts
one.
before we continue, man?
No, I just think that I think that I will say that the Superman that they got for this show, Lois and Superman and Lois, he looks like Superman. Like he doesn't like seem like not Henry Cavill, but Brandon Routh, he almost looked like he had a wig on. And you can't look like you don't have your own hair and be Superman. Superman is a guy, he's got a great head of hair. He's Superman. It's his hair. Everything is him. He's a Superman. But I feel like they've casted that show right, and they did the crossovers that were good. And I feel like when you're doing a project like that, where you've got a bunch of different shows all over a network, it's best to mix them together. Like, it's kind of like, I used to listen to the Rockefeller records back in the day, so I used to love to listen to Jay-Z, and he'd be rapping, and then he'd be like, oh, all right, Cameron, come in here rapping, and Cameron would rap, and then they'd be like, pass the bars to somebody else, and then it'd be some other famous person. So I just like when we have that collaboration within an idea, especially when they're world building. So it's sad to see them go, but they did a lot of good things with the
And
show.
who knows? Like I said, it hasn't been officially confirmed as of yet. The possibility is there, strong possibility, mind you. But they may figure out a way to still that we're still be able to be a part of their lineup. So I just want to put that out there, that it still hasn't been confirmed as of yet. As of this taping, this airing, this live airing of this show, maybe we'll get some new news coming into the coming week. But as it stands now, it ain't. It's hasn't been announced. So I will say that. All right. So getting into basketball yet again.
Let's
Um,
go.
We have former NBA 3-point marksman JJ Redick. Um, uh, Basically went in to interview for the Raptors head coaching position. Uh, what are your thoughts on this, Spillman? Man, like I have thoughts. It's considering everything that history that we've had with players becoming coaches. I have some thoughts on it, but I'll pass the baton over to you.
All right, I will say this about players becoming coaches. Most of the time, the best player coaches are players who were good but not the best. I feel like JJ Redick is certain kind of player. He's played at every level. He's been successful mostly everywhere. He hasn't won a ring. He never won a ring, but he's come very close many times. And I also think that he's got the respect of people because he did it himself. Like, JJ was good because JJ was good. He went to Duke, he was hated there, all those things. But I think that JJ, I know people are going to grow on and be like, oh, JJ hasn't been coaching long enough to be a coach. But I feel like, sometimes you got to get a guy in there that has been an NBA player because that's one thing that's true about all of these guys is that they only listen. These players only really listen to guys who play in the league. Like that was a problem with Frank Vogel. Really, a lot of other coaches that get fired haven't really had NBA experience. Like Mike Brown is great, but he never played in the league. So it's like at a certain point, they say you may know basketball, but you can't possibly know more basketball than me because I've made it to the NBA, and it's like you haven't. You may be a coach now, but you didn't dribble in the NBA. So that is a big thing to me. I think that people are going to look at like guys like Steve Nash, Derek Fisher, Jason Kidd in his first year and be like, "This is dangerous." But what do they really have to lose? What do they really have to lose? What do you think?
No, I hear what you're saying, and it. JJ Redick, shout out to him because he you listen to him on ESPN when he gives his takes, and you also I always also watch his podcast as well. If anyone who doesn't check out his podcast where he has players on, and they talk about a lot of basketball. They talk a lot of basketball, not just of the games themselves, but some other fascinating components of it too, of what it means to be NBA pro, like a lot of things that a lot of people don't really think about. So but granted, all of those things being said, there's still uh, something to be said about what we have seen in the past with coaches that were former players. Um, while he has, undoubtedly, played under some incredible coaches, Coach K immediately comes to mind to me of, incredible basketball minds, not, you've played under them, you've had that experience of being a pro yourself, but still, even with all of those things, I still feel that it would still behoove someone who aspires to be a head coach, even if they are a former player, even if they bring that pedigree, even if they bring that respect from other players, is to continue to earn your stripes. And it's kind of like same thing in acting where people say oh, I paid my dues. And don't get me wrong, you have those rare instances where you have folks that they undoubtedly have that talent, and they're still able to cement themselves among their contemporaries. But time and time again, we've seen, and I'll give credit where credit is due, just like you were saying, there is something to be said about players becoming coaches, and we've seen it where players who have become coaches have had a great deal of success. Hey, well, talking about Warriors, right? Steve Kerr,
Steve Kerr,
multi winning player
seven
with
time or 4-time or 5-time champion. Yeah.
multiple rings with multiple teams. Still though, he still had to earn those stripes, coaching under other
He was
coach.
a GM though. He wasn't a coach. He was a GM before he became the coach.
True, true, true. But I'm saying, like, even if that were the case, even as a GM, there was still that element of being in that environment, being in that environment of developing a team.
Right.
It it's I would feel a little differently if JJ Redick was in some component of that team building process versus coming directly over from being on the other side of being a part of the media and talking about dissecting a lot of the games and bringing his analysis to it. And don't get me wrong, like I said, he's demonstrated that he has a great mind for basketball. However, at the same time, I feel it would be helpful, to potentially be an assistant coach, under some, other coaches. Time and time again, we've seen it with Popovich. He's been able to pave the way for a lot of other coaches who have worked under him, that have become terrific coaches in their own right. Or I mean, Coach K, time and time again, a lot of time coaches the USA team. So like I
Yeah.
said, I would
I
say
think it. I think that he's from the kind of like championship DNA and everything. Like he did not win a championship, but he's played basketball at a high level for the last 35 years.
undoubtedly, undoubtedly,
Not 35 years, but the last 25 years at least.
undoubtedly,
So it's like you can't like I get that like we can make like we would like more black coaches and stuff, but JJ played in the league. Like I don't really get bothered with people
undoubtedly.
that play
So here's
coach.
my thing. I'm not
Like
saying that I don't believe he has the potential to be a great coach. I do believe he has the potential to be a great coach. I'm just saying that I would hate, or it would be a shame to see what's happened to other players who have kind of jumped ship right into head coaching,
oh
and what's
yeah,
happened to them to happen to him. And I feel like a way to avoid that would be to, like I said, earn your stripes and to, work not only under other players, but just as you the point that you were bringing up about Kerr, yes, it wasn't, a situation where he was working under prior to, joining, becoming the coach with the Warriors. He had the period as a GM, but still you could say even as a GM that you're still in the trenches with your team and knowing the ins and outs of what it takes in order to develop that team to be, a championship team. And and
for
and
sure.
even if you're not directly coaching them, you are still in the trenches with those players day in and day out about dealing with a multitude of things that behind closed doors that maybe other people aren't privy to. And I feel that's what helps establish those that trust and those relationships to be able to get players to play at their maximum for you. Because
I think
I agree
I
with you.
think the
There is
question
something to
is
be said about players who become coaches. Like I definitely feel that there is a different element there because it's similarly, and I've discussed about this. Just switching gears, but giving. Trust me, I'll get back to it. It's relative. Is if we're talking about acting, right? There are instances where you have directors who are very technical and they know their stuff in and out. Technically, they know their stuff in and out, about the shot that they want,
oh yeah.
about the story that they're trying to tell, the big picture of all the pieces that need to come together. But when it comes to
Hmm.
actually sitting down with their actors and speaking, you know i- speaking on those things that they're looking for from their actors, and understanding what their actors need in order to bring those elements that the directors are looking for to life for their overall grand picture that they have for their film. It There's something to be said about that when there's kind of, a communication break there versus, perhaps a director who's been an actor formerly. And so they already, understand what it takes for the actors to be able to bring what they do to a given role. So that way, when they need that as the director, they need that from their actors, they're able to communicate that properly in a way that, actors are able to take in and provide their best work. And don't get me wrong, we have directors that, aren't necessarily actors, but they're still great directors. But there are terrific there are also great directors out there, and I can say this, personally, as someone who has had opportunities to act. It's it's so refreshing when you have directors that are former actors, because they are able to speak, your language. And it's not to say that all directors can't speak that language. They can, but I don't know, there's kind of like this second hand that someone who has experienced it and done it, you know, has, that you can't really replicate or replace. And that same goes when we're talking about players who become coaches.
For sure. And I think that really the questions we all have is, will JJ be able to run and implement a offense and defense? Because he is a player that played off the screens. I don't see him as like this offensive genius, but I feel like he has something that like guys like Derek Fisher and Derek Fisher and Steve Nash didn't have. And like Steve Nash is a great player, but I don't feel like Steve Nash. I can't remember any playoff games where Steve Nash buried somebody. Like I don't feel like he's that aggressive of a player. And I know he's won like a bunch of MVPs and stuff, but I've just never felt that Steve Nash was a go after kind of player. And I feel like JJ isn't that kind either, but he's a lot more ready to go at people and challenge people because even from his TV experience, appearances, which are kind of acting, they're not really real.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that those are kind of boisterous things, but he's able to articulate his plans and everything and how he wants things to go. So I think that may work for him. Plus, I feel like JJ might be the new Jerry West because they're both from like the Appalachians. Because Jerry's from West Virginia and JJ's from Roanoke, Virginia. So just a little bit further south, but still just as country. But they both are men with a swagger. So I think that his swagger will help him a lot because I don't feel like Steve Nash had the same swagger. Like I don't feel like allegedly
And
you'd
see,
never
that's
see JJ let one of his other players date his wife. Like I don't feel like JJ would be cool with that. But like it happened to Steve Nash and it like
and
kind of was
see,
a
I
thing.
was gonna
And
say
yeah,
that's where I'm gonna have to disagree with you, in that while I feel like, don't get me wrong, like, JJ is able to hold his own when, when we see it televised, when they are doing their takes. And he's, breaking down games and providing, he eloquently, I'll give him credit, he eloquently provides his breakdowns of matchups and game series and game. I would just say games in general and the matchups
right,
that are incorporated in those specific games. He does a terrific job with that, and he highlights his points very eloquently and very clearly. I feel like sometimes we have commentators that are really great at giving, like, a lot of nice, sayings
right.
and like cute things to say, but it's not really, it doesn't always have substance of what they're trying to get across. And I feel like JJ more oftentimes than not does a decent job of that. Even when he's trying to say something, um even when there's humor being involved, because I feel like sometimes there's a attempt to be funny more so than being like correct or clearly stating what your point is. And
Right.
I'll give him credit that he does a more oftentimes than not a decent job of clearly stating what his opinions are, and it doesn't really seem like there's an agenda in what he's saying. It seems pretty a lot of times when he is, explaining his points, it doesn't seem like he's coming at it with an agenda. He's just objectively just stating what it is that he's seeing, which I appreciate. Now, with all of that said, I don't know how that's going to work in a setting of dealing with a lot of egos with NBA
Oh yeah.
players. And this again goes to what you were talking about. I mean, you mentioned the fact of Kerr, being a GM. You're dealing with, what even if you're not specifically coaching the players, you are still dealing with a lot of those egos firsthand. And, whether we're talking about, the last player on the bench or, our starting players, our franchise players, you're dealing with a lot of egos. And being able to balance through that while still coaching a team, that takes a delicate
Yeah.
hand. It takes someone
Yeah.
who not only can rally a team, but someone, just like you said, can, when necessary, hold their ground and not be a doormat. And I understand how you would picture that JJ would be that way, but I still am not convinced that he would be able to comfortably do that
Yeah. And I think he
in
understands
the
the NBA
context of an
culture.
NBA season and with the team.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that he understands the NBA culture. He understands how
No, undoubtedly, undoubtedly.
and he understands how to win. And I feel like he also, because you look at guys like Steve Nash is not from America. Like, even though he's been living here his whole life, I mean, since he came to the NBA, he's not from America. He's a Canadian. There are differences in how we do things. I know that there's small differences, but differences nonetheless. Um, he also was never like he was the star once he got to the Suns, but Steve Nash was kind of unsung most of his career, and I think that JJ has always been a front runner. Like, sure, when he got to the league, he had to build himself up a little bit more than he did when he got to college. But he was the man in college. Like, there's one thing to have a coach. Like, that's why I compare him most to me to a Jerry West type player. Like somebody who was the man, know they're the man, have that in their heart, but couldn't really get over the hump. And if you can't really get over the hump, that puts a chip on your shoulder that makes you win forever. And that's what I feel like we could really see out of JJ.
Okay. Like I said, undoubtedly, he's a terrific uh mind when it comes to basketball. You hear him talk basketball, and you can tell that he does his homework in terms of understanding matchups and as I said, the teams that are playing and anticipating things that can be done strategy wise with either team in order to come out with the win, and then also breaking down what was happening that prevented them from coming out with the win. So I believe that he would be a great coach. I'm just saying that for me, I feel like it would be it would be great for him to continue to have more opportunities to coach, where the pressure and the ownership is not completely in his camp or in his court yet, so to speak, and he's still able to s- to still work under another coach, where that coach can also you know give him strategies and experience with dealing with players and handling players appropriately, in different circumstances that can happen over the course of a season. Um, I don't think his ability to coach basketball is a problem. I would say more so, just to sum it up, would be the intricacies of or the I hate to say the bureaucracy that can happen in the workplace of uh of uh of the NBA locker room, because
For
let's
sure.
we'll call that the NBA workplace, the locker room,
Yeah,
the front office, like being able to navigate through all of those different facets of, maximizing the talents on your team.
exactly. So
So
we'll see. I think
we'll
we'll
see,
see. I think it's interesting.
for sure, for sure. All right. So, last but not least, I wanted to get into it because, I mean, of course, unless you guys have been living under a rock, you guys don't know about, the impact that the writer strike has been having on the industry, across the board. Um, there have been a lot of, casualties of uh of what's been happening, with the writer strike. There are a number of shows that are, have been impacted as we speak right now. And just going down the list, and this isn't a story by Deadline. There are a multitude of shows out there. Daredevil Born Again being one of them. If you guys aren't familiar with that show hasn't even made it to Disney Plus yet, guys. This is
It
a
hasn't.
Disney Plus show that's going to be a MCU, in that MCU universe, that will be making its way to Disney Plus. That show has been impacted. A favorite of mine, Billions. If you guys haven't checked out that show is awesome. Incredibly written show. Billions. Um, FBI Most Wanted, P Valley, Power Book Two, Pretty Little Liars. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I mean, even most recently, we got there's been news that the Tony Awards, and if you guys aren't familiar with the Tony Awards, it's like the the hugest award show that you have in the world of theater. As it stands now, there was a hope, that the WGA, which is known as the Writers Guild of America, would provide like a strike waiver to that show, and that's not the case. So as it stands right now, it looks like the Tony Awards won't be televised. So there's so many casualties. However, with all of that said, I want to make it clear that I completely understand, the need for them to be able, writers to be able to strike, and being able to, pay writers what they're due. I mean, all the shows, we've been talking about, a multitude of shows outside of, the topics that we've had on sports. We've been talking about Spillman, a multitude of shows, whether we're talking about Babylon 5, whether we're talking
Right.
about, the Arrowverse, and how important, you know, writing is to a given story, and how it can, make or break a show. I mean, yes, it's terrific to have uh actors and that are able to bring the characters to life, and it's great to have, directors that are able to kind of bring all of those elements together. But it starts with what's written on that page, and what's written, for those characters, what's written regarding that world, the world building. I know you touched on that world building a little earlier. Um, a lot of those things would not happen without our screenwriters, without our writers. So, whether they're writing for television, whether they're writing for film, whether we're talking about any other facet of writing, our playwrights, what have you. In any case, we need our writers to be able to tell those stories. And because they have such, an impact in that story making process, it would behoove, the
Oh wow.
entertainment industry to pay them accordingly for that, for those efforts. So, um, we have, as I said, all of these shows that are, impacted, but again, we have those instances that I feel like sometimes in order for change to be made, you have to hit those you have to hit that wallet. So I don't know what your thoughts on all this, but I know I kind of went on a rant there, but go ahead.
I know you went on a rant, but I have breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news. This is slightly a tangent, but we did talk about basketball earlier. Monty Williams, the head coach of the Suns, just was released after 4 years. So, unfortunately, you got to do good. That's sad. Sorry for Monty, but you know, they got KD this year, lost in the second round. If you do that, generally you'll lose your job. That's just how it goes. But I think that back to what we were talking about with the Screen Actors Guild. Um, I think that writing is important, and if we don't have the writers that we need, we're just going to continue to have filler shows that are not good. And I don't like to watch TV shows that are not good. I like a show that's well written and a nice round show. So um, I just appreciate that the shows are, you know, that the writers are fighting for themselves because they're selling billions of streams to people and they're saying they don't know how much the money they're making, but they know exactly how much money they're making and they know they're not sharing it with the artists or the creators. So they need to share. Um, these people like, are working on $1 million properties and getting peanuts every day. So it's sad the way that they do these things, how they control these people, but and to continue to reap in the benefits. But I don't want to sound too liberal or like much of a communist or anything, but I just think that the creators at these companies who create billions of dollars in revenue every year deserve to have their just names be sung heroes instead of unsung heroes, and just to ensure that they continue to work together because we need those unions to keep these shows good because the shows would be terrible if they weren't here. We complain about corporate decision stuff like they jump this channel to this channel. Ultimately, if the show is good, it doesn't matter what channel it airs on.
For
So
sure.
I think that the writers are the most important thing. So that's all I have.
For sure. For sure. And I mean, like I said, unfortunately, and this isn't any situation, the only time that change is normally made is when you start targeting that wallet, like
Hmm.
that's the change that causes people to pause and to really assess. Unfortunately, that's what it takes, but it is what it is. And if it means that we have to get reruns of shows and not get any new shows until the folks who play such a pivotal role in a lot of the content that we enjoy um are paid accordingly in the way that they should be paid, then so be it. Like, because as I said, so many of these shows, so many of these films, whatever the case may be, would not be what they are without the writers that we have that are able to, you know, not only, you know, as you said, world build with a lot of these shows that have become, beloved, IPs. That's like the big term that Hollywood likes to use, but we can just, if we're putting it in layman's terms, franchises, whether it's on the small screen or on the big screen, we wouldn't have it without those storytellers that are able to bring those stories to the page that allow for that inspiration to spark in the artists that we see in front of that we see on the screen and that we see
Yeah.
behind the camera. Like, they're the ones who help inspire you know actors and other folks as well. If we're even talking about some of the other disciplines of what is it, production design or costume design, um a lot of it starts right there, on the page of
Exactly.
describing how these characters are, what they, what we should
What's their
picture for those
motivation?
characters,
Yeah,
how they behave. And don't get me wrong, you do have actors that, bring another element there, but it starts there on the page yet again, like before it goes anywhere else. So if we can't properly, pay the artists that help set that foundation for us on these stories that we enjoy so much, then what are we doing? Like what are we doing here, as they say? So um
it's just greed. It's pure greed. They're trying to slice the pie ever so thinly. It's like that scene on that old Disney cartoon where Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy are all sitting in a room and they're trying to cut the
right,
bread so that everybody can
right.
have some, and they got to cut the bread so thin that you can see through it. That's essentially what they're doing right now. It's piss poor. They need to do better, but I'm just happy that they're standing up for themselves, and hopefully they get something out of it. Last time they killed that show Heroes because of it. I feel like I stopped watching The Walking Dead because of the writers, because they had good writers at first, and then they did that second season where they like suspended like how the world was built, and I could never get back into the show because it was like, y'all didn't care if you see your friend get bit, you don't care. But if you see this little girl disappear in the woods, somehow y'all think she's supposed to survive miraculously. So
Well, I'm
it's silly.
decisions aside, I'm just saying, just in general, we would not have the shows that we love,
For
however
sure.
way you want to however way you want to
100%.
spin it or discuss it. We would not have them if it wasn't for our writers. So make sure that you are paying them accordingly for the efforts that they bring to your project. Yeah.
100%.
So
100%.
all right. So with that being said, we're gonna wrap it up here at This Week in Review. As always, I want to thank my co-host here, Spillman.
I'm
Spillman, can you
so
tell
happy.
folks where they can find
Ladies
you,
and
sir?
gentlemen, you can find me online, Truly Spill. I'm just so happy to be. I'll give you guys updates. We're going to the Western Conference Finals this year. Even though we started 2-10, We made a great trade. We kept believing in ourselves, and we're in the conference finals because we believed in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Let's go. We're going to get one more championship, and then we'll be better than the Celtics. I can't wait. Brandon here will be sad, but it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Fair deal, fair deal. So again, I want to thank Spillman for hopping on. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Not sad about my Warriors losing. They
You
had
said, don't
they
lie, don't
worked.
lie.
No, I'm not. I'm not. They had their season. We had some things that happened in the beginning that I feel kind of messed up the dynamics of the team, but
Yeah,
it's all
Jordan
good.
Poole
I'm
gave
still
up on y'all.
proud.
That's really
Hey,
low key. Jordan Poole is why we won that game.
I'm
Like
still
why we won that
proud. I'm
series.
still proud of the efforts, with all the challenges that they had over the season of them, getting where they got. Respect to the Lakers.
Yeah,
However, I still picture that what I discussed prior will still happen. I don't have them going into the finals, but
we're going to the finals, baby.
but uh but I but we'll save that for another show because we'll be back here. Don't worry, and I'll be here to
That's
discuss
right.
it.
We'll
So
be talking about us in the finals.
thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Troy ENT, which you see down below. Also on Instagram at Brandon Troy _ENT. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon. Peace.